That's right. Welcome, everyone, to the SBL waiting room. We're back. It's been a little while, but what better time to come back right after mid-season changes? Phase 2's been kicking off. Things are looking pretty good for us, and we've got a really good show ahead of us. We're going to be talking about the Bolts a little bit later. I think we also talked to the Bolts a little bit later, so that's going to be fun. We've got our first in-studio LAN matchup this week, and that's happening just later today, so there's kind of a lot of energy that's flowing through the air around here. But of course, we're going to have to look more in depth at what's been going on even since mid-season. A lot of things changed, whether it was the bans, whether it was the picks, the items. I mean, so much has absolutely changed. And this is where things are going to be interesting because we're looking at it, and I would actually argue that now is maybe more variety than what we've seen before. Right here, you're going to be able to see a lot of fun names, notably these teams that have been doing well. But I'm going to throw it out there and say there were 52 gods that were played last week, as well as 40 gods that were banned. A wide variety. There were new objectives to fight over, specifically on this graphic. Thanks to Blues Ultra, by the way, for these sick graphics. Go down to the bottom left. You see that Draugr control rate for the duo lane. New things to focus on, new gods that were showing up. We had an Izanami game. Xbalanque was being played a ton. I think we're seeing a lot more variety, and I'm excited to see what this week has in store, especially with a LAN game coming up. But even without that, having all of the things that we have available to us now here in SMITE makes it a lot more interesting. And I think Aggro might have had some thoughts about this one. I know we have his opinions, at least on something. So let's go ahead and figure out what those are.
No, I know he was supposed to take you out last weekend, but he got busy. He'll call you later, okay? Scarlet, Dave will call you when he's ready. I gotta go, all right? God, being Dolson's secretary has been exhausting, but finally I've got a moment to do an opinion piece. Listen, mid-season is coming up, and I can't wait to see what it's gonna do to the SMITEPro League. And in particular, I've got two teams that I'm gonna be keeping my eye on once the mid-season patch hits. Number one, the Camelot Kings. When you've got Genetics and Captain Twig on your team, there's going to be some interesting theories coming up, as Hazer once famously tweeted. Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe, you know. But I think it's going to be really fun to see what those minds come up with and how they're going to attack a brand new meta. And anytime I'm thinking about new meta, the other team I'm thinking about is the Atlantis Leviathans. This team has been so good. It's sticking to the bread and butter, doing what everyone else is doing, but just doing it better. But now it's time. You know, they've been in the league for over a year now. It's time for them to take that next step. I'm going to be looking for the Leviathans to maybe set some trends in the coming meta. And you know what? Count me as a believer, because I really think the Leviathans are going to be a top-tier team. I'd expect them to maybe be near the top of the standings by the end of Phase 2. It's going to be a lot of fun. And in particular, I think what's going to be really OP... I'm sorry, I got to take this, so I'll get you next time. Zendaya, I swear, if you call me again, I'm going to lose my mind.
No way Aggro reacts that way if that is a phone call he is getting. Either way, that is some good thoughts on him. Keep your eyes, I guess, out on the Kings as of right now, but we'll talk about them a little bit later. Right now, I'm bringing in some help to talk to me about some of the things we saw last week. I got Myflin and I got Dave over here for the SBL waiting room. No, Dave, you're right there. You're Dave, as it would happen. I don't.
My secretary Aggro didn't tell me I was coming on the show today, so you know.
You just thought you were sitting here with the headset for nothing.
Yep. Okay.
He's just been chilling. Just happened to be here, and it made things work out really well for you. But guys, the things, again, last week we had a really wide variety of gods come out, and specifically some that I don't think anybody expected to see, maybe some that people expected to see, but not as much and maybe not as prominent as they were. And so this is where we're going to kind of maybe break into some of those gods and figure out specifically what's going on with them. And Dave, this is where things are going to get a little interesting for you. So Kali, she got locked in a whole lot.
Yeah.
Didn't do a lot of winning.
No.
Elaborate.
Well, Kali's in an interesting spot where I guess we're in this meta now where Boot's getting taken out. Maybe these later game style picks feel like they can hit some of those power spikes earlier on. But Kali just did not see that success this past weekend. It requires such a high level of synergy in a team composition to make it work. And then also on the flip side, at a tier like this in the SPL, when there are such high levels of synergy on the other side, that really slows down a Kali. When an opposing team can effectively communicate and effectively take a Kali out of a team fight, That's the big, what's the opposite of a boon? The big curse to the Kali, the bane of Kali's playstyle is when you have high coordination on the other side, and that's what you're getting at the SPL level. So I think I admire the creativity and the desire to make that type of pick work. I just think that there's too much coordination on opposing teams around that type of pick, and you can eliminate her from team fights.
Well, she, like you said, played 4 games, lost 4 games. Didn't necessarily get to do a whole ton there. Myflin, someone else that's on the list, also played 4 games, was Shibalanke, and kind of out of nowhere, at least to me, felt like he came out of nowhere. Bera just starts slamming this in the Bolts games. What is this Shibalanke bringing to the table?
I think Shibalanke might be a byproduct of this new meta in that we see a ton of bows getting bought by these hunters, right? A lot of bows. And what's the one common factor between all these bows? They're lacking a little bit in that power department. And branching bola, well, that's going to help you out a little bit with that. Go for the death toll, go for something along those lines, and all of a sudden, well, branching bola is just a free ability. I'm hitting harder, I'm hitting fast. You've got a little bit of global presence, and I was talking to you earlier, Dave. You brought up the survivability of the Rising Jaguar. It has a little bit of CC immunity built into the kit every single time that dash is available, and all of that kind of leads to a god that can fit right now, but I need to see a little bit more often.
I'm excited to see if it's going to be a mainstay for Bera, if other hunters are going to start picking him up, or if he was just last week like a really weird, rare instance. You get 4 games of X-Ball and then box him, put him on the shelf, and absolutely leave him behind. Someone that I don't want to see get left behind. We had 4 games, I believe, last year of Baba Yaga. We've already beat that this year. We've got 5 that happened just last week. And Dave, it feels like this mage originally, I think Herwind played her a lot last year, and then a sprinkling of BMT. No one else touched her. All of a sudden, she's a hot commodity.
Yeah, I think Baba Yaga is kind of a beneficiary of 2 separate things here, and it's changes in the past, changes from the 8.7 update, as well as the no boots changes. Myflin was talking with me on the cast a few days ago, and I think he worded it well, where the type of god that Baba Yaga is, you like to build some of these stacking items without the boots. You can hit those power spikes earlier on. You can stack those up earlier on. Your house, of course, helps you with those stacks as well. So I think that's one thing that Baba Yaga benefits from, and it's a really big benefit, being able to hit those power spikes earlier on in the game and get those stacks built up. The changes as well, I think, are also pretty important. Remember, in 8.2, back in February, she received some timing changes on her potions, and I think that was really important. The fluidity in that kit, getting the potions out, definitely helped the fluidity of that kit, and I think that put her in a really good spot. And then some cooldown reduction on her escape and some buffs to her ultimate as well. So I think all of the changes plus the current meta have put her in a good spot.
Kind of like compounding over time, where it's like she finally hit that breaking point where now all of a sudden, hey, she's really good. It just happened to take a few months of time to really, again, stack on top of each other and get there. Somebody else, oddly enough, 4-gamer hunter as well. Artemis Myflin was played a ton last week. And again, you see Shibalanke, you're starting to see Artemis. Now I'm starting to wonder, is Cupid going to come back into this? Are we going to a meta back at the beginning of, what was that, Season 2, Season 3, like years and years ago? Or are we falling back into old metas? Are we bringing something forth? Why is Artemis all of a sudden kind of taking this forefront?
Man, I got the harder ones here today, Gore. And it's called Hot or Not. It's not exactly what I was expecting, but Artemis, I think, is, again, due to the bow changes, she really utilizes Silver Branch incredibly well. We saw a couple of changes throughout Season 8.
She does have a real bow, too.
Yeah, she has a real legitimate bow to synergize with that bow build. But I think it's the changes in Season 8 that have been slowly accumulating for this god that have finally reached a tipping point in which she is playable. The boar is a little bit easier to focus nowadays, has that cone in the center, so you can target whoever you want initially. You also have a little bit of slow immunity on the Vengeful Assault, and generally just a pretty safe god inside of Smite, but similar to Shibalanke, I need to see a little bit more. Crit really is starting to be that bread and butter for this Artemis build.
Yeah.
We haven't really seen too many of these Artemis games go long enough for her to really hit that 6-item stride. Once we do see that, we'll have firmer opinions on this god.
Well, I'm excited to see it just because I like Artemis. It's just fun. I like variety. I think that's really what it comes through is you telling me, man, I don't have to watch another On Her game this year? Good. I'm fine with it. Keep them shuffling. Keep them stacking out. I like watching On Her. That's a bad example. He was just the first hunter that came to my mind. I guess Heimdall Dolson was up there as well. I'll throw them both under the bus. They can take a back seat for a little bit, come back in phase 3, give me some of these fresh takes as we move forward. But Dave, one more god I want to crack your mind for. Turns out I understand Baba Yaga got 5 games. Everyone else we've talked about had 4. Baba Yaga just stole 1 game off of this person. Only played 3 last week. This Hebo, Ihabwa, however you want to pronounce him, if you want to be the SMITE community or the actual pronunciation, he's sprinkled in some of these games.
Yep, he is, and I expect to see probably a similar play rate moving forward, where 3-4 games maybe over the course of a weekend wouldn't be all that surprising. And it's interesting, I wondered if some of the changes to Staff of Mirrodin was why we would start to see more Hebo. We didn't see a whole lot of that bot, if I'm remembering correctly. It was kind of the standard build with a little lifesteal earlier on. You go Vamp Shroud, Bancrofts, Typhon's Fang, Charon's Coin. It's tended to be kind of the vibe with this guy. The big update, or the big change really in 8.7 was just that his base damage went up on Water Hands. It's a pretty low, or Water Cannon. It's pretty low cooldown ability. You get flat damage right off the top, 60 to 80 at level 1, which is a decent little increase there. So that does feel good. But I think with some of the mages, you can look back towards the ability to hit those expensive items earlier on. The later game gods can get online a little bit quicker. Mm-hmm. If you want to build Vamp Shroud on a mage as well, Vamp Shroud's in a really good spot right now, so I think that gives Hebo a little bit of a boost as well. But I think in the hot or not conversation, firmly in the middle. He's okay. He's a 5 out of 10. We'll see him a few times a weekend. I don't expect it to be the peak meta pick, though, moving forward.
He's an interesting one. He's always been that glass cannon conversation of, hey, he's real easy to kill if you can get back to him, but he will do his best to destroy you before you can touch back. It's always going to be interesting, and those are just some of the gods that we saw last week, and I think we should keep our eyes out for this weekend to see if they continue coming back. But I actually got to sit down with the Bolts on Monday. If you were watching the media day, you might have already seen some of this, but we got to talk about the bans, all these gods that were showing up on there. I'm going to spoil one was Soul, of all things. We decided to talk to them and figure out if they were going to stay on this list.
Yep. Hey, welcome back, everyone, as we come through. As you can see, Barrett and Vin, once again, with me, who are going to be sitting here. But this time around, we're going to be discussing the top 6 bans of this last weekend, specifically after the mid-season patch, and just wondering if it was kind of like a little bit of a hangover there from phase 1 / playoff / week 1 of phase 2, or if it's like the new and true that is going to continue on into the next weeks to come. And so naturally it makes sense to be able to go through them and look at in the order they were the most banned at, which the first and foremost, look, I've got a spoiler alert. I don't think this one's going to be changing, but I do want to know your thoughts. Gilgamesh, is he going to be continuing to be a top ban, or is he maybe going to start slipping through a lot more?
Definitely still a top ban. Still a very, very, very strong character.
Yeah, definitely. Probably perma ban and ranked, no matter what.
That kick will still do a quarter of your HP, maybe a third. So, you kind of got to respect that as a carry. So definitely still a strong pick.
So that was your chance to say, like, no one should be banning him, so that you could try to get him for Lasmer a little bit more and get him
leave that character.
I mean, people probably just like test stuff, so you might see it open every now and then. But I mean,
once people start to figure out maybe how to take care of him.
Once like the meta settles down, you just see more bans, consistent stuff.
So oddly enough, tied with him, he was banned 12 games last week. Raijin was also banned 12 games, and like Vin, we see a lot of Raijin, but I feel like we've had a lot of mid lane flexibility. Like, is Raijin gonna stay up there?
Probably. I mean, he's kind of been meta, I think, since Season 7, like the beginning of Season 7. He's just kind of carried through the whole entire time. So, I mean, everyone can play him, so he's just a good, consistent mage. And, yeah, probably. You might see some left open. I mean, it's just about testing, but, I mean, he'll probably be banned.
He's kind of good at all stages of the game.
Yeah.
Got early game pressure. His ult does like a trillion damage late game, you know.
Woohoo! They're like, hey, as long as I'm not getting hit by it, I don't care where it is.
Yeah, that thing still finds its way through the team fight to hit you for like 500. So, fun character.
This is one that I think you guys have banned a few times, banned against you a few times as well. The Fenrir has kind of like, he jumped up towards like playoffs, the end of phase 1.
Yep.
Still kind of been that hangover. Is he going to remain up at the top, or is someone finally going to start maybe taking his place?
It was the brutalized, or not the brutalized, the 2 buff that really sent him over, right? Yeah, when he gets runes now, he gets 2 runes. So, I mean, if that's still in, you can kind of like flex it. So, I mean, I would see it, but
it's a really annoying character to play against and pick and ban against.
It enables a lot of stuff as well.
Yeah.
So probably.
I would say definitely staying up there. It's weird because you wouldn't look at like Finner as like a super OP pick, but then when like you play against it, you're like, oh.
Yeah, when there's some good
is.
Fenrir's, you know,
Yeah.
you know, like you might not get in ranked, but like when there's good Fenrir's, it is not an enjoyable time.
We're 3 for 3, man. They're all staying banned at this point. Look, I've got bad news. I don't know if this one's truly going to break this trend. Tiamat banned the same amount as Fenrir. There's a couple of teams, like people have been more willing to let her through against like the Valks right now. But
we let her through.
is she someone that's going to be banned just as much, or is she slowly falling down?
I mean, you'll probably see people like test stuff, like just
Yeah.
leaving it open as a test, like new meta, new builds coming out. Like, can you
Yeah.
beat her? Can you not? I mean, the most practice you technically do get is from SPL, so you might see some teams just leave it open to see if they can play against it or not. But
I would say probably this week everyone's going to be testing a lot of things because as the weekend went on, I think we saw the meta develop more towards Sunday. And I think this week you are either going to look at those top 6 bans and be like, okay, we have to ban this. We don't want to play against it. Or maybe we leave it open. Maybe we have some for fun scrims and see what happens.
Well, the first 4, like we were talking about this earlier, like it makes a lot of sense. Like all of those, pretty much any game, any teams are blanket. The number 5 on the list is Soul. And notably, you guys played a lot of games this week, and there were a lot of Soul bans maybe going your way as well. So is Soul someone that is going to be banned consistently, or is this just a Bolt-specific try to shut you guys down?
I think there is, like, it's dependent on if there is a Soul player on the team or not. Like, I think everybody can play it, but whether or not, like, you can be like consistent with it, or just like if you are a Soul player or not, like that's just dependent on it. So, that's what I think. But
yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
No, I might be getting ahead of myself because we did 5. I said top 6, but I want to ask about this because so not available this next week in week 3, but going into week 4, Morgan Le Fay is going to be an option, and this is probably going to be a segment on like the waiting room that weekend. But I do want to know. Is Morgan Le Fay like a must ban that you've experienced right now? Is she someone that can take like Tiamat's place, or is she going to slip through and just nobody's going to care about her?
I think she's going to be a character that if you can play her, she'll be really strong. But if you can't play her, I think she's semi-hard to position sometimes.
She is an immobile character after all.
Yeah.
And she does have her like big weak points, and that's usually when a god has like weak points in SPL, like you kind of can just get it. Like you do just kind of get abused by it. Like if there's like a set in stone weak point, that will just get abused. So not too sure.
Probably depends on the jungle and support meta when she gets released, whether you can play like an immobile character and feel unpunished.
What builds are being built as well.
Like if Fenrir is still available, maybe.
So
as of right now, it's a no-go.
I'm not too sure. It's hard to tell because, I mean, the few times I've been able to play her in rank, because she kind of is permabound, she's been fine, but like it's also ranked, so it's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, it's because once you get into the 5-on-5, it's just like it's completely different at that point because it's like now you have 5 people who are divining rod to kill you and only you. It makes things a lot more difficult. Well, it's a fun one. Soul, maybe the question mark. I guess Morgan Le Fay, another question mark, but we won't be seeing her in the weeks to come. So it'll be a couple of weeks before she's even available, but hopefully we'll get to see some play of that. But thanks for your opinions, guys. It was really fun. I'm excited to see what that is. Of course, that's going to do it for at least this little bit of a segment. We do still have the Q&A coming up with you guys as well as the team check-in. I think I got those reversed. It's the team check-in first, then the Q&A that's going to be coming in. So we'll be right back, and we're going to have not just these two, but the rest of the Bolts boys on the round table.
Those team check-ins and Q&As, those happen Monday if you happen to miss them. So you can either go through the VOD, I believe. You could also go to the youtube.com/ I want to say SMITEPro. And find us. Yes, I know SMITEPro is our YouTube channel. I want to throw that one out there. I just don't know if that's where we're uploading them. I'm going to assume that is, and you'll be able to see those eventually.
You should go there anyway.
And also, hey, forward thought, Monday is going to be the SCARABS. We're going to have them in studio and be talking to them. They're also going to be in studio later today when they play against the Bolts. There's a whole lot of stuff that's going to be going on. I just knocked off my monitor with my kneecap. But that doesn't matter because I know exactly what's going to be coming up next. It's going to be Fact Gaming. We got the bans. We'll figure all that out because it's going to be happening a little bit later. Now, instead, let's talk about some questions. And I have these written down in front of me because I prepared these, it feels like ages ago, so I'm reading them for the first time in 5 days. Let's figure out what they are. Question number 1. First, it was that the pick diversity is almost as great as it was in Phase 1, and we're only 2 weeks into Phase 2. So, I want to ask you, who is the most first picked god so
First
far
picked.
in Phase 2?
Gilgamesh.
Gilgamesh.
It is a new god, but you're both wrong about Gilgamesh. It is actually Tiamat as of right now.
oh, yeah,
and she's
duh.
been getting through way too much,
yeah.
at least that I've seen.
5 first picks.
5 first picks.
You
That
don't,
is
Myth, let that be a lesson. Don't, unless you actually agree, you shouldn't just jump on this.
You came in so quick. I was gonna say chat. I was gonna say Gilgamesh.
yeah, he was
I was gonna be wrong on my own, chat.
It
I swear.
has nothing to do with him.
well, we'll figure out. Maybe you could be wrong on your own on this one. Who was the
Yeah,
most
up.
picked god last week? Who got picked up the most?
Gilgamesh.
Now, this is how you can tell Myflin wasn't paying attention. If you had been listening to the Bolts video, you would have known he was the most banned god last week.
Of course.
So,
Fafnir.
you know that one. And Dave hits it on the money. I think he was on the monitor when he said that. 9 games there for the Fafnir. As he's
I
just
got the
popular.
next one.
Look,
I
it's
guess that
supports.
makes
I think
sense.
supports
Yeah.
were
I
the
guess
top
that makes
2.
sense.
Hold on. I'm going to get this one just for me. It was Fafnir, then Ymir, then Odin, and then Osiris.
I
So
was
that
gonna
was
say,
very,
Fafnir and
very
Ymir,
fun.
I guess, makes sense.
And then 5th was Gilgamesh.
Guan Yu. Let's try it. You got it down. You got it. Yeah, you got the G. You divining something out of the air. It just wasn't the right thing. All right, we've got 20 gods left, including Morgan Le Fay, that need to be played. Name one that isn't Morgan Le Fay, since I just named her.
Vulcan.
We got Vulcan, Apwash. You're both right.
Should we keep going until one of us gets it wrong?
No.
If you want to, but
I
I
don't.
can also just name all of them because I don't
18.
want to
Oh,
cut
they're
out
at the bottom
other two. That's yeah. You've got AMC, Apwash, as David mentioned, Amaterasu, Anubis, Arachne, Bastet, Bologna,
Do it like a
Chak,
Pokemon rap.
Iset, Hades, Jormungandr, Kumbhakarna,
yeah.
Nox, Oleron, Skadi, Sylvanas, Thoth, Vulcan, as Myflin had said, and Zeus. It's a lot of gods that still need to be played, but also in the grand scheme of things, it's such a small fraction of Smite.
I think there's like a handful on that list that might get played.
Oh, which
Hades,
one?
look, Hades. If Hades doesn't get played
Like
in the next
maybe
2 weeks, I'm
Hades
going
at some
crazy.
point. I think Bologna saw what SEC play at some, or maybe there was the AVGL finals where Bologna saw a little play.
She did.
Chalk
yeah, the
also saw
jungle.
some-
I know.
play.
I know the Bolts well enough to know that if Barra heard this segment, there's a chance that he will play Scotty. If they win game 1,
That's
they
true.
go into game 2. He might
see.
lock it in.
We're going to see
what works out.
Jormungandr today.
Mifflin's declaring it. All right. Well, we've got one more question.
Okay.
I don't know what this one is, so let's see what it is. What was Doug's first diamond?
Oh man.
What's Doug? Wait,
man.
is his? Okay, hold
What's
on.
the most
Smite
passive
Guru.
god? It's got to be Hera or
Ra.
Skadi,
I'm gonna say
right?
Ra. I'm locking in Ra. I'm locking in Ra.
I'll go Ares.
Ra, Ares, Dave.
Artemis.
Yeah, close. Arachne, then Apollo, then Ares.
Ares,
So you
nice.
got one of them.
There
Hey,
you go,
that's-
Doug.
you
That's a
got the
point.
third best.
That's a
There's
point.
Doug. Look, knocking it out of the park. Doug has 3 diamonds. That's more than I have. I only have 2.
That's a fun fact.
Did you know Aggro has 180
Why?
less deaths than Mifflin?
He's
in
also got
competitive
a
play?
third of my competitive career, all right? SPL, I retired him.
We're on a timer
Went
here,
on
Gore.
to win Worlds.
We're on a timer,
played
Gore. You better
another
move
Here's
on.
another
season.
fun. Hey, wait. Here's another fun fact.
We're on a
Aggro
timer.
had an 80% win rate when he played. That one's. I just
And
know
that
off the top of
20%
my-
was me,
All right.
baby.
I don't like this pivot and bit. Why are we suddenly loving on Aggro? What happened
He just
here?
got back.
Oh yeah,
He
wait. You're
clearly
right. Everybody already loves Aggro. Hold on. Wait, pause.
What's the pivot here? I don't know what the pivot is that's happening.
we'll just move on completely going into the week 3 talk as things are going to break down. First and foremost, things are kind of topsy-turvy, or maybe not even topsy-turvy as you would expect it after Phase 1. Some teams have started to fall into the same places they were before. The Olympus Bolts, the Leviathans, off to a really good run so far. 3-0, undefeated. And the Bolts at 3-0 are the ones that we're really looking at because they've got a doubleheader this week. They're playing the Scarabs, as has been mentioned, in studio. I can't emphasize that enough. They're going to be here.
Today.
Finally! It's going to be great. And then they're going to also be our closer up against the Dragons. I can't think. Look, Scarabs have been killing anybody that's undefeated.
Yep.
And then they are also a threat because now you have to fight the Dragons. The very first one, going into this Scarabs matchup, things are going to be complicated. Dave, I think the solo lane is going to be a spot where there's some interesting sparks going to be flying.
Yeah, it's a sneaky, difficult matchup here, I think, to call if you're looking at the entire team, but the solo lane as well. HADDIX has been playing so well over the last couple of weeks, so I think my eyes turn towards SOT up against HADDIX here and how he's going to be able to perform. Look, if HADDIX keeps getting these aggressive, in-your-face style picks that the solo laners have been getting, you know, I find it hard-pressed to see how HADDIX feels uncomfortable in some of these lanes. But even the more passive gods, we've seen Guardians over in the solo lane. HADDIX has taken to those pretty well. The Sobek has looked good, 4-0-13 up against the Titans when HADDIX played that pick. But then also you get an Odin, you get a Guan Yu. I think the flexibility out of HADDIX is really important to look at. SOT, I think, has the ability to step up tall against HADDIX, but that's going to be a tough matchup. I'm excited, though. I think that's a pretty close duel over there in the solo lane that could tilt the way that matchup goes.
We've got a ton of HADDIX replays because guess what's been happening in Bolts games? HADDIX has been making replays for himself, like essentially just a non-stop montage in these games. I'm just going to throw it out there. The Bolts and the SCARABS have only played each other once so far this year. It was a 2-0 for the Bolts. It's weird because I have their player versus player of HADDIX and SOT, and they did play in the minor league 5 times prior to that, and that's where SOT has a ton of wins over HADDIX.
Yeah.
But I would argue that the Season 8 ones matter the most, and right now those go in favor of the Bolts and in favor of HADDIX here, so that's going to keep things interesting, at least for the first Bolts matchup. The second one gets even more complicated because not only do you have to go through, I would argue, an incredibly difficult team, although right now maybe not in the standings where they'd like to be, Myflin, you have to beat Panda Cat and PBM in a duo lane, and that's just difficult. I mean, Jake and Bear have been popping off.
Especially with like the recent style shift we've seen from Panda Cat. I've associated Panda Cat with that just, I'm going to put my pedal to the metal, I'm going to go as hard as I can, I'm going to try and find these solo kills. But recently, almost maybe maturity is what it is, but Panda Cat has been really focused on just playing pretty safe inside the lane. If he finds an opportunity to get aggressive, obviously he'll do so. But outside of that, he's been playing a much more subdued style, waiting for these team fights, whereas you talk about the Bolts with Barracuda and Jake, you'd think, well, that subdued style is something we really have started to associate with Barracuda throughout the years, but with the advent of Jake in a post-Jeff Hindla world and the 408 now influencing the Godakuda, feels like a little of that young energy is starting to get into his system. He's trying to look for these solo kills pretty consistently. I mean, how many times just last week were we seeing early game dives inside of the Tier 1 tower? This is a very exciting matchup. I'm very excited for it.
I'm just pumped. I think that, especially as like a closer for the week, that's a really, really good one to watch because it's either going to be 2 very exciting games or a nice 3-game just meat of content that you're going to be able to watch. Maybe, I don't know if there's a better way to describe it. A lot of food to be able to consume on that one. Make sure you watch it later today when they go up against the SCARABS, and then again later this week when they play the Dragons. Right now we have to look and see how we are thinking on a lot of these matchups. A lot of agreement, save for one aggro at the very, very end.
And
He's
community.
Leaning with the Dragons, the community leaning with the Dragons. Everybody else going with the Bolts. Are we that confident? Look, I'm a little confident, but are we all that confident?
I think it's, you have to go on the way they're playing right now. I think the Bolts are playing like a more consistent team right now. I think the Dragons, they already proved it in the Phase 1 finals that they can beat the Olympus Bolts. But right now in Phase 2, as of this moment, the Bolts are playing like a more consistent, better SPL team. And I think that's all you can go off of because it's such a close matchup. The back and forth is so exciting to watch. All you can go off of is the momentum that the teams have and the play style that the teams have in Phase 2. And the Bolts have looked better over the last 3 games.
The Dragons did be winning during those Phase 1 playoffs, though. They kind of did that, and they did it in a 3-1. Like, it wasn't like, oh, they went 5 and they were all close. Like, they won some real quick ones in that set.
Yeah, that's like a 41 or a 59, like, no, 51-49 type matchup, right? Where it's like 55-45.
Maybe it's saying numbers. Maybe it's a 59-41.
Maybe it's
what are you guys doing?
58-42.
Shut up.
So close.
Myflin, if you're wondering, they're percentages that add up to 100.
That's why they all added up to 100.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, I got that, of course. It was
quick
just
maths.
Acidic high number
2
stuff.
2 plus 2 is 4 minus 1. That's 3. Quick maths.
You're gonna get us DMCA'd again.
Again? Wait, that implies that I've done it before. I've not been informed of this. Either way, it's going to be a fun week. I'm excited to see what is going to come through. I'm sure everybody else is as well. Thanks again to Myf and to Dave for sitting around and talking with me for the last 30 minutes. Thank you for sticking around and watching because now we're going to go to a quick break, and right after that, the SPL is going to be here. So stick around, grab your snacks, grab your drinks. We'll be right back.